Hey everyone, this is Alex, and yes, this is still a videography and photography channel. I'm going to talk here about the R5 R6 from Canon and the Sony A7S III. And I'm going to tell you, you don't need those guys. You shouldn't buy them unless, and here's the summary, if you want the best mirrorless machine that there is right now for photography, that's going to be the R5 and R6, depending on your needs. If you want the best 4K machine, that's going to be the A7S III. Case closed. Bye. For real, the devil is in the details. I'm going to tell you why we should look at the details. Even 4K is not necessarily the thing you need, but those machines might actually help you out, make things more easier for you. And that's the goal of buying something. You need to buy the machine that will help you make things easier for you. And even if the marketing is very good for all of those cameras and all companies, well, these are still $3,500 and more cameras, plus lens, USD, plus accessories. It's something you need to think about. Do you really need 4K for vlogging? Not really. Or maybe you want something that does 8K for your production. That's not the product you need. Let's put the timestamps here, the menu. But basically, everything here has links below. And if you want to dig deeper in those videos, go ahead, and they are awesome videos that I have tailored for you or curated for you. Yeah. And I'm gonna go very fast. I won't even tell the specs. I'm just going to tell you, if you want the beast of photography, go for the R5 or R6. You can't lose with those. If you want to compare movie qualities, check out the links below. There's 2 videos from Gerald Aldon, and he goes into details, right? There's something else about the 4K and the 8K that I'm going to talk a little bit later in this video. If you want to do some low light things, well, the Sony A7S III is pretty much unbeatable for now. Well, at that price range. Maybe the most important thing for you is IBIS, right? In-body image stabilization. And Canon, this is the first time they do the IBIS, and they nailed it. It's even better than Sony. And yeah, there's 2 videos links below, and you can compare. But if IBIS is really, really important for you, you're actually going to buy a gimbal. That's gonna save you from all that hassle. Think about it. On the rolling shutter, they're pretty much equal. Sure, there's some slim differences, but you'll pretty much have the same thing. How about menus, the flip screen, and, well, the colors. Welcome to 2020, Sony. At last, they have something that actually works great. You can do the touchscreen with all the menus, and the colors, well, the skin actually looked like skin instead of a green alien thing. Card slots, if one of your things is that you need absolutely 2 card slots, which is useful. It's like an insurance, right? Sony will record both cards at the same time, which is fine. And Sony actually did 2 card slots, but both are double. So you can either put SD cards or the new CF Express card, form factor 1, I think, form factor A, I believe. As for Canon, the CF Express card is form factor B. The B is a little bit faster, but when you do 4K, you have a little bit less need. 8K, you need a little bit more. But it's a reminder, this is not an 8K camera for production. I'm going to talk about that later in the video. How about autofocus? Well, they're both excellent. I don't think you're going to have any problem with the autofocus from all of those machines. But there's one specific type of autofocus that you're going to probably go forward into Canon R5 or R6, which is Animal AF. And it's very good. Very, very good. Actually, it's superior. If you are taking bird pictures or living animals, and this is your living, and that's how you bring money to the table, yeah, the R5 and R6 are unbeatable. And with those new lenses that they have, amazing. And there are some links below. Check it out. Tony and Chelsea Nortup did an excellent video on that. On the subject of the R5 and the R6, what about your older lenses? You know, you like them, you like how they perform, and they cost you a lot. Well, with the adapter, your old lens will be better on the mirrorless body than they are on your DSLR. Why? Well, instead of having all your focus point in the center, you're gonna have 80% of the screen or whatever you see. The lens will go as fast as they can go, and there's some power in the R5 and R6 because they have the same processor. The RF lenses will go a little bit faster. New technology, so they'll be a little bit better. So I'm going to talk about the overheating, and after that the 8K, right? So the overheating, how could I say that? Sony have a lot of experience in overheating. And basically right now, that new machine, if let's say you are doing a lot of 4K 120 frames per second videos, right? Like Daniel Schaffer, for example. That camera is going to be better for you. And this is how you're doing your living. You're making money on these videos. So yeah, go ahead and buy it. That's a no-brainer. And allegedly it won't overheat. But there's still some people who actually made it overheat. And there are specific reasons for that. They're using a passive overheating system, probably a heat diffuser, which is fine for the Sony. But basically, it's gonna overheat and you can shut it down, wait a little bit, and start it up over again, and you'll have a lot of time ahead of you. As for the Canon, well, there's actually some development on that. The 8K, forget about it, it's gonna overheat for sure. About 20 minutes, more or less. If your goal is actually to record in the 4K HQ mode, which is a high quality mode, it takes the full sensor readout, shrink it down to 4K, and this quality is outstanding. So the first goal of this is actually to have best image sharpness and quality. It's not low light, it's not 120 frames per second, it's just image quality, period. And it's actually overheat when you put your cards and everything inside, but when you record outside the camera and remove the cards from the camera, you can actually go for hours and hours. So you need a Ninja 5 for that. So it's something else that you need to buy. And there's actually a link below. There's a tutorial. Somebody made a tutorial on that. So yeah, check it out and it's pretty interesting. There is actually a couple of things that can bring heat to our camera, right? There's the cards, there's the battery, sensor, and processor. And if you remove a couple of these, which are the battery and the cards, now the CF Express card, that's a hot one. It's very hot. Of all those four things, it's probably the processor and the CF Express cards that will create much heat. So if you remove that, that gives you way more time, actually a lot more, because he did the demo and he recorded 4 hours. In some rare conditions, if it's like 100 Fahrenheit or I think it's 30 Celsius and more constantly with the sun, the Sony A7S III will actually overheat, and it would even overheat after the Canon. So I've put a video in the link below, but basically you will be able to just shut it down for 5 minutes, start it over again, and you'll have another 25 minutes. But it's very rare, and if you have any doubts, just rent the cameras, any of them, and try them out. It's way better than to rent them than to actually buy them and after that regret your decision. What about the 8K, the famous 8K that was everywhere? Well, it's fun to have, but let's be honest here. This is a tech demo and you'll be able to experience 8K footage on a body of that size with that form factor with awesome image quality at that price point. But it will overheat for sure. Armordo actually made a great video on that. I've put a link in the description below about this can't really be used in production for long-term shots, right? He did a small demo with it, and it's a scene from a famous movie which I can't remember. It's short, it's very short, but in the production of videography world, let's just call it like that, well, you set up your rig and you do everything, you do the focus, you prepare, blah, blah, blah. While this is happening, your camera is overheating. Surprise! So it's not really the camera for that. Go check out this video there. If you want something that films 8K for a long period of time, you'll have to go something with a RED, and that's $70,000 more or less, but it's reliable, sort of. Check out the link of a Linux Tech tip on that. So what is the benefit of filming in 8K or even 4K, right? Let me show you a little demo here. I took my favorite product and I filmed it in HD first and 4K after. And basically you can actually see that, well, the image look exactly the same, more or less, right? So the benefits of 8K is not to publish in 8K. That's too hard. It's for the flexibility in post with minimum image quality loss. What could be useful for a filmmaker? You can crop, zoom, pan, scan without any noticeable loss of quality or sharpness up to a certain point, of course. So let's say I take that product shot that I did in HD in 4K. Let's zoom in 200%. And you're gonna see slight difference. Maybe not that much. What about 300%? So we're gonna zoom even more, right? And now you're gonna start to see that the HD is still usable in a short 1-second clip, but if you want to push that for a long time, yeah, that's not working. What about 400%, just to exaggerate all the time? As you can see, obviously the 4K is better, but if that would be a 8K footage, you would probably not have any difference between the 8K zoom in at 400% and the HD at 100%, of course. There's other reasons, of course, to film in 8K or 4K, but 8K would be better. Of course, you can get better motion tracking. How about downsampling, right? Combined with color correction or color grade with less visible noise at the end of the day. These are all advantages that you get from 8K, from a good camera, of course. For example, like the Red. Does a vlogger need 8K? Or do you actually need those cameras at all? Well, if you use 8K right now, well, you'll be disappointed for the R5. If you use a lot of 4K right now, and you tend to go towards 60 FPS, 120 FPS, then you're gonna find a good investment in the Sony. And if you are into photography and you want to make larger prints and get some birds on your shots, then you're gonna go, of course, Canon R5. But do you really need them right now? Why not wait a couple of months and think about it? The price will go down and the winner is gonna be you. And they might even release a couple of firmwares that can change it. We have a rumor coming up. It might be a firmware. This is only a rumor. It might be a firmware for the Canon R5 and R6 about those complaints for the overheating. That might be interesting. There's gonna be, of course, more tests from all your favorite YouTubers for correcting that. One more argument that I want to do for anybody doing those kinds of things and vlogging and stuff like that. Well, if you look at Tony Nortup, right, he was using 4K Blackmagic's camera, right? And eventually it was getting complicated, right? Because 4K is about more or less twice or 4 times the data, and your machine needs to process all those data too, and that takes more hard drive space. And that's a lot of things to put into your whole workflow. So they actually went from 4K back to HD because it's so much simpler. And they bought Canon RP cameras. Nobody said anything. No one saw it and there was no complaints. So that's something to think about. So one thing for sure that I'm really eager to have in my hands, well, that's actually Roger videos from lensrental.com that he's gonna tear down those cameras. My doubt is that Sony A7S III has a heat dissipator and that Canon actually have none. Eventually, I'm gonna make a video on how to buy something, when, why, and the reasons to do so. Because you don't really need to buy everything that marketing tells you to buy. On that note, guys, take care. And coming back to that vacuum, well, I actually needed that extension to go under my fridge to be able to remove the dust, of course. But there's also a heat dissipator under that fridge, which only fits with that adapter. So I needed that thing. Not the same thing about, wow, that's a nice gadget, and I'm gonna try out 4K or 8K. Think about that too. And yes, this is still a video in VOD. And those lamps are so strong.